Sarah Jenks, you are a celebrity in our household. Do you know this?
Oh my gosh, I don't. Tell me everything.
Okay, I will. Dan and I took your marriage course. And every week he'll be like, well, did you read what Sarah had to say? And, well, because we're on your newsletter. And actually, Dan is on your newsletter because he was the one who signed up for the course. And so, like,
I love it.
I get it, but he was like point man, you know? And
Right.
he feels
I think you
really,
guys did that.
he feels really good about himself, as he should. I mean, is there nothing sexier about a man?
There's nothing sexier. They got to feel great about themselves.
They feel great about themselves loving a priestess. And I feel great about that too. So he's very excited that you're here. I'm very, very excited that you're here. We've been trying to get you on for some time now, but you've been very busy, as you should be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to be here. And I just am so excited to connect with you.
Thanks.
You know, and it's great that other people get to listen.
Yeah. Hi, people. Actually, hi, people. Sarah, would you introduce yourself to the Mom Curious audience?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm Sarah Jenks, and I am a priestess, which is sort of a triggering word for a lot of people because we have had millennia of bad branding of what it means to be a priestess, a holy woman, a sacred woman, a magical woman. And I have really walked this journey of rejecting my sacred feminine and rejecting my magic. I grew up in a wealthy suburb outside of Boston. And I graduated top of my class in high school. And I went to the top liberal arts college in the country. And my traditional path to success was clear and laid out for me. And I took many, many twists and turns. And a big wake-up call for me was when I became a mom. And it really put me on a journey to needing to find out exactly who I was and why I was here, because nothing made sense to me anymore once I became a mother. And here I am today as an ordained priestess. So that's me. I have a global community of over 100,000 women, and we do in-person ceremony work. I do online work. I have a community, and it's just been so fun walking women through the sacred ceremonial path to discovering who we are and really coming into our power. And I work with a ton of moms because that's been a really big part of my journey. And so I'm just really excited to be here with all of you. It's just going to be great.
It is going to be great. It's like currently great, at least for me. I don't know about you guys. I'm having a great time. I'm reminded that when we give birth and we have this little baby in our arms, there's a real reckoning with what is linear, what is the next step, what is the masculine, right? And then this sort of winding path feels so essentially feminine to me. And so when we have that first baby, you talk a lot about Marshall, who's your first baby.
Yeah.
And I'm listening, babe. I'm like on your Instagram. I'm reading your newsletters. I know Marshall. I love Marshall. I love the little boy, because I have a little boy also, Ness. The little boy who really cracked me open to realize my own feminine, my winding path, my innate embrace of the unknown, which is so opposite of the masculine. God bless it. And there is that in us as well. Of course. But man, can I relate to that experience. And many of the listeners are not moms. You just met Laura, who's the executive producer of the podcast, and she's not a mom. And I think there's something so beautiful about the priestess path, the mentor path that you've taken for so long, holding hands with women who may or may not want to be mothers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's been a whole thing. And I've been really such a stand for women owning their path of not being a mom. I think it's incredibly important because it's all part of the patriarchal brainwashing that we've all grown up with, where there's just so many assumptions that we make about who we're going to be or what we're going to do, or even what kind of mother we're going to be, or that we're going to be a mom at all. And I feel like the main theme of our generation is looking at where do we actually have choice, and how can we source that choice from within us instead of outside of us? Because that's been my whole journey. I spent my whole life just doing what the outside wanted me to do. And I think that's why I just assumed that I would have a baby and then just want to spend all of my time with him, because my mom spent all of her time with me.
Bless
and that's
her.
what was best for her. Bless her.
Is that what was best for her? I wonder. Was it?
I don't know. I think that is her business and journey. But but for me, I was just like, wow, this whole stay-at-home mom thing, it wasn't going to work for me.
No.
And that's not to say it doesn't work for a lot of people. But again, like we have, and all of a sudden I realized like, oh, then I had this belief of, well, I can either be a stay-at-home mom and have absolutely no life and lose myself, or I can work and have a life and completely ruin my children.
Right. That's what the patriarchal brain. Right. Of course, the binary, the black and white thinking. Right.
Exactly. And then I think for women who are choosing whether or not to have kids, it's like, well, I can have kids and be like a good member of society, or I can not have kids and like constantly question my womanhood. Like, this is ridiculous.
Right. It's actually not the truth is what I think we're getting to, is like, what is the patriarchal brainwashing? You mentioned that there was a trigger word earlier on, calling yourself a priestess, but I find that patriarchy is quite triggering for men and women. And I think there's a lot of misconception, and you break it down beautifully. But I think the misconception that I'm most wary of is this idea that men are bad, or it's all their fault. And I don't find that the patriarchy is serving men, and certainly not Ness, and certainly not Marshall. And certainly not Dan, who reads your emails, and certainly not your husband, who co-facilitated your modern marriage course. So if you could actually, from your priestesshood, walk us through what is the patriarchy and what is patriarchal brainwashing, I feel like we could get on the same page in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. And I'm just feeling like in this moment, it would be great to have a different word than patriarchy. You know, like let's call that in, because here's the deal. If our patriarchy was run by the noble masculine, we would have a very different experience of the past couple thousand years. Right? Because the noble masculine is deeply loving and protective and steady and even and safe. So this has nothing to do with men. And I think many men on the planet right now are finding their way back to the noble masculine, as opposed to just rejecting their inner masculine. Right. And so when I say the patriarchy, and I'm like going to really make it a number one priority to find a different word, is that it is a system of oppression that deliberately erased the noble feminine. So this has happened in cultures all over the world in many different ways. Of course, we are seeing it so bluntly right now with Iran. And in my own, the piece that has impacted me the most is my Christian upbringing, where if the if patriarchal forces hadn't come in and deliberately erased Mother Mary as a priestess and Mary Magdalene as the feminine Christ.
Full chills, full chills.
And I was raised to believe there was a mother and a father and a masculine Christ and a feminine Christ. I would have a much different understanding about who I am as a feminine being. And I think we would all have a different understanding about our inner masculine and our inner feminine. And so when I say patriarchy, it's the erasure and the lies and the twisting of what the feminine is. And to me, that's the part that I want to look at. And a lot of my work is dedicated to how women have actually internalized the stories. And I find that for a lot of us who live in the United States, obviously we're under attack in so many ways with the overturn of Roe v. Wade. However, a lot of the patriarchal systems are no longer external, they're internal. And so I really feel strongly about us shifting our internal voices around how we see ourselves.
Well, that's what brainwashing does. And I think, when Laura and I were talking about this episode, we actually called it societal brainwashing. But I actually know I met you and your work through Avital Schreiber, who was one of our very first guests.
Okay.
Very special. And you did mention patriarchy, and you had a lovely, heated debate, which was about, 3 minutes long. About it. And so I knew that was the verbiage you used, but societal is good enough for me.
Yeah,
Societal
absolutely.
brainwashing. And we've internalized it. I know that you talk a little bit about, having grown up being like in a bigger body than your classmates, and revolting against your own self.
Yeah.
That's not what babies do.
No.
They love their roles. Oh my God, they love to touch their own little bodies and to enjoy how it moves. They live on the inside.
Yeah.
What happened? Brainwashing, right?
Brainwashing. Yeah. And I think, it comes, and it's so important to understand where it comes from, which is for so long, women literally weren't safe unless we were likable, right? Because we didn't have any rights. Like, we couldn't get our own credit card until the 1970s.
That was yesterday. That was
yesterday.
1 day ago.
So literally, if someone was married to us and we gained a bunch of weight, they could literally just throw us out on the street and we wouldn't be able to have a bank account.
Oh my God, I have like a visceral response to that experience. Not because it's actually in my, not because it's in my field right now, but because that is our epigenetic inheritance.
That's our epigenetics. Yep. Yep. And I know that you know this intimately from doing your short film, and it's like, it's really intense. And so we have to remember that whoever is maybe playing a role in teaching us these brainwashing things, it's really patterned as a survival mechanism.
Right.
And so I think when we can start to look at it as a survival mechanism and then realize we don't need that survival mechanism anymore, and we can do the, embodied somatic trauma work with our bodies to really help us just realize we're not dying.
Well, we're not there. Oh, sorry, you were going to say it makes...
No.
Well, I think the real thing is, like, even with epigenetics, and thank you for mentioning my film, I come from Holocaust survivors, but I also come from a line of women. Mm-hmm. Just women, just all women. My family actually is from Iran on my father's side. And let me tell you, if you have ever been to a Persian event, if you have ever eaten Persian food, if you have ever heard the Persian language, music, ever met a Persian woman in LA, in New York. They're all, you can meet them anywhere, but there are large Persian communities. They are so fucking sexy.
Yeah.
Opulent, sexy, not over sexualized, but they are in their feminine. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, as you said, about, US history. It wasn't until the revolution in the 70s that this, regime took over and, as you say, erased the juiciness, the winding embrace of the feminine.
Yeah.
In every
and I come
area.
from Puritans. So it's intense in here.
It's intense in the heart space still, even after all this work?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's not like the blanket that runs my life, but it comes up from time to time. Like it's still there to be worked on.
Right.
And there are, of course, like things that trigger it that come forward where I have a part that's like, not safe, not safe. Right. And I just have to be like, it is not 1850 anymore and everything is fine.
Right. Because you're a witch,
Yeah.
From Boston.
Yep. From Boston. Yep. Well, and literally my ancestors are from here. So my ancestors came over on the Mayflower, settled here, been here for a very long time. Obviously a very dark and riddled history with the genocide of Native Americans and my family and being settlers and all of the things. And I also feel a lineage of magic and sacred feminine, not only from a soul perspective, but from an actual DNA perspective. Yeah. And so when I lived in California, it was like a lot easier to just like exist. But now that I'm back in Massachusetts, there's stuff that comes up.
Do you think it's easier to exist outside of your hometown?
Yeah.
Like exist as an evolved being, as an adult. Yeah.
I totally do. I think it's easier. And I also think that there's a specific path of growth that some people choose when they decide to really be their full and expressed selves in their hometown.
Right, right. I'm reminded of this idea called Laisha Vidya, which a meditation teacher once introduced me to, which is like the latent remains of ignorance. So when we're still triggered by thinking we're under attack, when we're in fact safe or relatively so, these are the faint remains of ignorance, so that we can be relevant to those who are also on the path. So we can lend a hand, right? So you're holding space for these women and you're not saying, oh, I don't experience this anymore. It's all over for me. I'm just floating on a cloud. Come join me. You're saying like, no, I get it. You're not crazy.
No,
this is really a scary landscape and we can work through it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of my work of being a priestess is using the life path as the path to integrity and awakening. So where other lineages will use meditation or transcendental meditation or study, the path of the priestess in my specific lineage is literally using your life. And so I have to really get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that is like literally my tool, is how it shows up in me and in my life, and then using that as a mirror for what's happening in my community's life.
You posted something very recently about you're a woman who travels, you're a woman who takes care of yourself. Somehow that's threatening to the patriarchy. And by the patriarchy, I mean other ladies who want to shame you and men too, I'm sure, but just it's
mostly women.
But it's mostly women. See, this is why we do need another name. Okay, societal pressures would have other women want to hold us down because if I'm brainwashed, I want you to be brainwashed too. If I'm playing small, I want you to play small with me. Who else am I going to hang out with in the tent if you're off in Paris taking photos
Totally.
and making out with your husband? Who am I going to complain to? If you, well, and that's of course my small mind, right? That's of course not my higher self, just for the record.
Yeah.
That, and I see that in the day to day, and it's your job in the day to day to say, oof, I get you. I see you and I won't let you. It's like those crabs in a bucket.
I know, that pull the other crabs down. Yeah.
Come die with me.
Will you share that whole thing for people? Because I'm trying to remember, like.
Yeah. So there's a phenomenon if you have crabs in a bucket and one of the crabs creeps up to the top, one of his friends at the bottom will literally go all the way up to the top and bring him back down. Wild.
Yeah.
It's a faulty survival mechanism. Like somehow that crab thinks, oh, if you come back down with me, we'll all be okay. But in fact, no. We need all the crabs out of the bucket that we can. And just to, be clear, we're the crabs, guys.
We are the crabs.
As women are the crabs.
It's crazy. The thing that someone said to me one time, I actually don't remember who it was. I should probably try to remember. Was that what happens is if someone is not living in alignment with their soul and their truth, and they've gotten really committed to that, and they just don't feel like it's possible to do anything different. And so they have spent a lifetime feeling like a little bit disappointed in their life because they really feel like they have to. Again, it's that survival mechanism. And then they see someone else who has like maybe a similar life, who chooses to do something different, and coming to terms with maybe they wasted 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, staying stuck in a place of their conditioning as opposed to like being free.
Yeah.
That's hard to look at.
It's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. Like imagine being in a jail cell and you've just sat there for 20 years and someone comes over and just takes the key off the wall and opens the door. And all of a sudden you're thinking about 2 decades of what you could have had if you just looked up and got the key. And that takes deep bravery.
Yeah.
To look at how you maybe could have done things differently and to find then the courage to go forward and do it differently, because just in the act of like opening the door and leaving the life that you've built for yourself, you're also saying that maybe you didn't really like your life before.
Right.
And we haven't been taught that that's okay, that we're allowed to change our mind all the time, that we're allowed to do things differently, that we're allowed to evolve. And that's one of the things that our society took away from us, because embedded in the sacred feminine is cyclic, is the cycles of the seasons, is the cycles of the moon, right? And we're meant to have the energy of spring where we're growing and summer where we're celebrating and then fall where we're dying and releasing and winter where it's just like we feel lost and we don't know where we are and things are fallow. We have no creativity, but then it comes up again. And it's like we are literally wired to change all the time. And I want women to just like have some permission to be like, nope, I'm just going to do it differently now because I'm different.
Well, I have that experience where like, no, pivot. And I do find that my husband is like, you are so fickle and you are so airy fairy and you are so artsy fartsy. And all I could think is like, that's why you're into this.
Yeah,
why we're
like
doing
that.
this.
I think it's great.
It's the whole point to me.
It's the whole point. Well, the thing that I love bringing women's attention to, and a lot of people have heard this before, but maybe you'll hear it differently and maybe it's new for you, is, the sun is a masculine essence. The sun basically rises and sets at more or less the same time every day. And, it changes a little bit, but, we sort of know we can depend on the sun. The moon is nuts. Like the moon the cycle the sun goes through in a year. The moon goes through that in 29 days. So the sun goes through the entire zodiac in a year. The moon goes through the entire zodiac in 29 days. The moon is a feminine essence. And also the moon is expanding and contracting every month. And it's going through a different sign every 2.5 days. And it's at a radically different place in the sky every day. Like when it's a new moon, you can't even see it. It's on the other side of the earth. When it's a full moon, it's in the sky. It's so hard to track. And that's the feminine. And we just have to embrace it because we're creators and creative energy is very fickle. Jonathan always says I'm like the weather in Texas. It's like I'm sunny in the morning and stormy in the afternoon. And he's like, you just bring a raincoat and it'll pass eventually. And it's true, but that's creative energy. And the masculine is sustainer energy.
I mean, the masculine is that penetrating force, that consistent force, consistent. I mean, isn't that one of the greatest qualities? I mean, I'm in a heterosexual partnership. So for me, being with a man, I'm like, he is so fucking consistent.
Yep.
He is there every day doing that thing he does. And that turns me on. And right? It makes you giggle. You're like, yeah.
I'm like, I love it.
On any given day, at any given time, I'm Madonna, right? Not the first Madonna, but Madonna, the musician, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember watching her totally transform every 6, 8, 12 months? She was this other person. Her music was different. Her look was different. Her interests were different. That is the feminine. And it's not that it's not airy-fairy, actually, because if you look at her, right, she has a very strong masculine. She really saw things to the end. She held her own. And her creative whirlwind was all about evolution. But not evolution over the course of a lifetime. Evolution right before your eyes.
Absolutely. And that's what's so great is when you can integrate, a strong masculine allows for a free feminine. And that can be in relationships, that can, regardless of gender, that can be within ourselves. And I think, that, because you can expand, the stronger the container, the more wild we can be.
Right. And how fun is that?
So fun.
Something that I constantly talk with Dan about is how much fun is important to me. And, I think he wants to enjoy his life, but it's not it doesn't drive him, for whatever reason. Maybe it's conditioning, but I think there's something pretty essential, and it's not a personality necessarily, but I feel when I'm most in my creativity, when I'm most in myself, I have a lot of fun. I seek it. I enjoy. I give myself permission to have pleasure. There's a teacher named Mama Gina who always references the clitoris, and it's how many nerve endings in there? We are wired for pleasure. And I'm not saying that Dan isn't into it. It's just it's not the main focus of his life. And wouldn't that be a shame if I didn't let that spill over into his existence?
Exactly. Yeah, I know. And that's what's so great. And that I love that you use that phrase spillover, because we really have to fill ourselves up first and then offer from the overflow.
Yeah. I'm wondering actually if you would walk us through and I know that you offer this in so many of your beautiful courses. I took the Sovereign Mother course as well, by the way.
You did? Oh, good.
Well, that was the moment that I thought, oh man, I gotta get Sarah on this podcast. If we could just give the ladies a heads up, Sarah Jenks style.
Aw,
We
thanks.
as a species, we as a species would do so well to be allowed to be ourselves.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I created Sovereign Mother. It's like the sacred path of freedom inside of motherhood. And
Mhm.
yeah. Anyways, what were you going to say?
Well, just that I was, in case there are people who are listening who don't know your work just yet or your story, I was wondering if you would walk us through. Maybe, maybe let us know. Did you always want to be a mother? And
Yeah.
what your life was before, and
Mhm.
what that experience was after.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did always want to be a mom. And I, however, I got pregnant out of the blue. And so that was an initiation in and of itself. I didn't feel ready to be a mom when I got pregnant. Jonathan and I were married, but he was in his third year of a 6-year surgical residency. And so he was working 90 hours a week and I was supporting us financially. So I was nervous about what it was going to be like to have a baby with our situation. So, but my hope was that I would feel so in love with being a mom that all of the hardship around money and like all of, Jonathan not being around was just going to disappear. And that really didn't happen. It made it worse. And, I think that there were definitely some chemical things going on with postpartum depression. I think that being the primary breadwinner postpartum was incredibly traumatic for me. I didn't feel like I could fully just rest and heal because I felt under the gun to pay for our rent and our nanny and everything that I then needed to go, make money. And
Food is
then
good. Food is good to
food,
have.
also food. Food is
Yeah.
good. And then I got pregnant again by accident when Marshall was 9 months old.
You guys got to get out of that bed.
We do. But I mean, and that was like a miracle
Wow.
because I hadn't even gotten my period yet.
Wow.
And like, we were not very intimate all the time. Like we were fighting. So
Listen,
anyways.
when people want to get born, they get born. I'm going to be just
Well, that
straight
was the
up.
thing. So I got pregnant and I was I was with Annabelle and I was like, "What's up?" And she said, she's like, "You need me to be here." And it's true. Like I did. And just her energy and like her and Marshall, they're like twins because they're born 17 months apart. And the two of them, they have traveled so many lifetimes together. You can just feel their connection. She was just like, I am coming no matter what. We need to be together.
Marshall's there. I got to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now I have 2 kids under 2. I have a completely absent husband. We're now fighting all the time. And I'm trying to support us financially. It was a nightmare.
Yep.
It was a nightmare.
I want to just pause and say that it's so cool. It's just so cool to hear your story because you lived it. You're not, you lived it. Here we could talk, we can pontificate on priestesshood and patriarchy and consciousness and also you lived it.
Yeah.
You know it. And you've gone, anyway, I'm excited. I'm excited for you guys. Just want you to
Thank
know,
you.
audience. Yeah.
Thank you. And so I was just in the depths of survival mode. And I was going into sacred ceremony with my mentor. And I was keeping it a secret from everybody because I was so being normal and being good and like having cute pictures was I thought directly tied to me making money to keep my kids alive.
Right.
And so although I felt more like myself when I was sitting in ceremonial temple space than I ever have, I just felt like I had to be two people. And it was so hard. It
What
was
is
so
ceremonial
hard.
temple space?
Oh, that's a great question. So I like to explain it where a lot of people sort of understand what a Reiki practitioner is, where
Yeah.
they're using energy to line up all the chakras in your body.
Mm-hmm.
The way I like to explain temple space is you're lining up the energy of all the people in the room so
Mm.
that you're in a almost like a portal or a vortex that's created by everybody's presence
Mm.
and held by someone who understands how to hold coherent space, like through frequency and through energy work.
Wow.
And
And there's no supplements or medicine or drugs
no,
of any kind?
no,
Wow.
you feel you can get very altered, but no, there's no drugs or medicine. I don't do any of that sort of shamanic um, facilitation.
Mm-hmm.
And we do, in my lineage, it's called the 13 moon lineage. And we do a lot of work around feminine archetypes. A lot of it is embodiment. You sort of have to be in it to experience it. But all I knew was that I was experiencing like 5 years of therapy in one day of temple
Yeah.
and just really doing deep healing work around my wounds and my patterning and processing a lot of my depression of being a mom and also having a really real space to be honest about how I was feeling. So it just kept me alive.
Yeah.
This modality, this practice that I was doing in secret and like literally taking out my altar in the morning and like putting it under my bed. And, and it
So
was hard
different.
because
Yep.
yeah, right. So different than now.
Yeah, so
Like,
different than now because you're so public about your needs, your
yeah,
actions, your calling, your messiness,
mhm,
humanness,
yeah,
womanhood. It's so different. And you know what? That's what transition looks like. Sometimes
exactly.
it looks like it's a secret and you're doing it for you and no one needs to know.
Mhm. Yeah. And then eventually, usually it's like, oh, now I'm so, I can't not be my whole self anymore.
Mhm.
And it just became too uncomfortable to be the not me in my life. And I was the not me with Jonathan, my husband. I was the not me with my kids. I was the not me with my friends, in my work, everywhere. And I had to get in alignment with who I actually was. And at the time, Marshall was really struggling behaviorally. And I just kept hearing in temple, it was because I was like projecting all of my feelings of resentment of not being myself that was actually my doing, not his.
Was it
And
really
I
your
had to,
it was really your doing? You had to clean it up.
yeah, I had to clean it up because I was blaming him for me not feeling free.
I cannot relate to that more. It's why I think I track your Marshall story so closely, you know? I
Mhm.
have, and the subconscious, stuff is so subtle for us and so not subtle for the people we're in relationship to, particularly the young ones of
Yeah.
us who are
They feel
sensitive. They feel it. Don't we all feel it? Don't we all feel it?
yeah.
Um, but we know the little ones of us really they feel it and they also tell us straight away, stop.
Stop.
Stop. There was like a year in COVID where Ness, this like even-tempered, beautiful, amazing, blah, blah, blah. He's like my favorite little boy.
Yeah.
He was having the hardest time, just like you're saying about Marshall. It's because I was having a really hard time.
No, they say and express what we don't.
Bless them. They're
And
so intact.
I know. Oh my God. They're just barometers. And I, people kept telling me, oh, you just have to spend more time with him. And I finally got really real with myself. It's like, I have to get free. in my life because it's not Marshall's fault. It's my fault. I can choose. I have freedom. It's my choice. I can create the life that I want. I need to speak my truth and be who I am. And when I did that, Marshall and I became so close. He completely changed. We finally bonded. And it's amazing. And it had a ripple effect everywhere. And, we started this conversation with talking about modern marriage, but like Jonathan was a dick, just not a good partner at all. And we talk about this publicly all the time. So I'm not saying anything.
Yeah. And I signed up for the course. So like, yeah, you're in good company. I think it's easy to be a dick when we believe we deserve a dick. It's like,
right, exactly.
It's easy. Exactly. It's easy. I'm not saying that it's all, I think like, there's this like victim blaming narrative going on. And I don't think that's true. I think everyone has free will. But when we expect men to be a certain way, when we expect to be the martyr, and that's then everyone's okay with us being a martyr. I don't know what you're complaining about. You set out to play this role. I don't understand why you're so tired. Anyway,
I know.
You're not alone. As you know very clearly, you're not alone.
I know. I mean, it's wild how many women are putting up with mistreatment in their marriage and just thinking it's totally normal.
It's not, and it's not fun for them either. Dan loves your course. Loves it. We love Jonathan.
He's amazing. And this is why we had to really dive in, because part of me getting free was needing to have a different partner. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I couldn't be the fullest expression of myself, that I couldn't really be the true me if Jonathan was creating a stressful vibe, an edgy vibe in our home every day.
Right.
And not on his own path of him being free.
Yeah.
And so, the point of me bringing that up is that I just really want women to know that when you do decide to think about what it means for you to have the life you really, really want, it does create a lot of discomfort in the family system. And it creates the most unbelievable ripple effect if the people in your family system are also willing to look at themselves and say, I also want to be me.
Mm. That was a big journey for him also, right?
Huge journey. Lots of resistance. And he had to go through all of his own stuff. He's a grandson of Holocaust survivors, and there's a lot there. And I know. And he had a lot, and also surgical residency. It's like being in an abusive cult.
Oh, great.
It's just like really difficult. Mm-hmm. So he had a lot of healing work to do.
Well, the thing is, like, Dan is was a corporate lawyer. He's now an entertainment lawyer. Because of my feminine enjoying my life as an actress, he's like, wait, you could like what you do and be good at it and make money? Like, whoa, this is fucking great. But that training, being abused, I'm not even talking about like, parental abuse and the ripple effect of that. I'm just talking about person to person. When you are not sleeping, when you're not being treated with enough respect, there is just no way for you to be kind to your partner. And the same goes for, right? And then on it goes to the children. We have to be really mindful of where we're putting our bodies in space, who we're interacting with, because it has a ripple effect. I'm sure it was really worth it. I'm sure it was worth it for him to be a doctor and, all of this, but it's inevitable. Hurt people.
Yeah, it's really true. It's really true. And, but he did the work, and it's just been amazing to watch how it's impacting our kids, how it's impacting me, and, just watching. It's just so fun. Like when you're a person who's on your path, it's like really fun to be married to someone who's on their path and not somebody else's path. It's just sort of like, it's just nice, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think it has to be that way, but
You don't think
I
it has to
enjoy
be
it.
that way? You don't think it has to
I
be that
mean,
way?
I try to not make like blanket statements, you know,
Yeah,
about
yeah.
things. I don't know. I mean, for it couldn't be any other way for me.
Well, I think you're clearly a person who needed to break free from the paradigm you were living in. No
Yeah.
one in your family is a priestess. No one in your family is anything
Nope.
but Christian, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Like you were incarnated to be the change, the difference,
Yeah.
right? Not everyone is that way. There are so many, wonderful people who are genuinely happy with the cards they were dealt and the
Yeah.
life that they're living.
Which is great. Like we need
Ah,
you.
we need you.
Just be happy, you know? Like
Yeah, be
yeah.
happy. But Jonathan is now leading men, isn't he?
He is. Yeah, he has an amazing program called Men's Work, and he does sort of like the intro to inner work for men. And he works with a lot of like professional dads.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
And it's so fun. I like try to feel the energy, you know, every time he does a round, he has like 40 to 50 guys and they're just like,
Wow.
yeah, it's an amazing program. What he's doing is incredible.
In person?
No, it's all online.
Beautiful. And you do in-person and online retreats, is that right? What
I
are they
do. That's
like?
correct.
What are they like?
Oh, they're
Take us there.
amazing.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
Take
So
us.
I just did my first sort of larger scale in-person retreat. So we live on a 23-acre sacredly tended farm, half an hour outside of Boston. I have a temple here that I'm in right now. And we have this like, it's just an incredible land. It's like a whole other story, but we bought it from my high school therapist who also did sacred feminine work. It's just a wild miracle that happened. We have a lake here. So just recently I had 75 women come and we did sacred ceremony outside. And I really like to weave the ceremony with the practical application in our lives so that we're super clear. Because when we're in ceremony, what we get to do is we get to talk to the soul. It's sort of like being in a waking dream where we end up seeing things and experiencing things like in symbols and metaphor and seeing things. And so we end up learning so much about the truth about who we are in a very short period of time because we're bypassing the mind.
Right.
And then what I like to do is, we take that sort of metaphorical experience and make it really concrete so that women can really shift their environment back home. And so I do these with sort of different, in different categories of our life, depending on what women are really needing in the moment. So I have one coming up that we're going to do a similar journey, but we're going to do it online. So I have this amazing 4-person camera team that comes to the temple. We have women in the temple, and then I teach everyone how to set up ceremonial space in their home. And we'll spend a whole day together doing this ceremonial strategic process around our soul's work in the world. And then I have one that's about the body. Jonathan and I are going to do this for modern marriage next time. So I'm moving to having everything be in these like ceremonial, strategic, immersive initiations. Because the truth is, what I've experienced recently is that if I can get done in 1 or 2 days, what I would normally have to spend 2 months teaching online, like why not just do it in 2 days? It's so much more efficient.
Well, because especially if you're in like a retreat setting and your nervous system is so receptive and
Yeah.
calm and fed and full of
Fed.
nature and
Yeah.
community. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like it really can bake in a
Yeah.
way that just like popping onto your computer can't. However, you held Sovereign Mother online, and I took that course. It was maybe 2 hours a day for 3 days, and I
Yeah.
distinctly remember you walking us through a visualization of, yeah, I think the prompt was basically like, imagine you're doing what you want to do. Of course, there was poetry, and it was a little more zhuzhed, but what if you did whatever the fuck you wanted to do, or what you were put on the earth to do, or what your soul's calling is asking of you to do right now? Well, I remember it, and I was in Paris, and I remember coming back, and maybe it was 10 minutes. I have no idea, but time in that space, who knows? I came back, and my kids were happy, and I was happy, and I could feel the ripple effect of pleasure on pleasure. On my nervous system being calm. And, they say play is the work of the child, but play is the work of the mother too.
Yeah, so good. So how did that impact like your waking life after you went through that visualization?
Well, I went to Israel for 4 or 5 days on to do a conference, and also just to like enjoy Israel over Purim, which is just fantastic. And I came home, and I felt like I had retrieved a part of myself, given it a big hug, a part of myself that maybe I didn't even have when I was a child. Like I went to Israel to go get it and bring it back home with me. And then, that one of the last posts that I saw you post was you were like, I get to be a juicy woman who loves her husband and gets to travel and look beautiful and take photos. And maybe this wasn't always my story, but it's my story right now. And other people have shitty things to say, and that's okay. And I literally that day was like, okay, one of my dearest friends is a meditation teacher. She's doing a retreat in Costa Rica. And I was like, sign me up. Sign me up. I got the one life. I got the one life. One time. My kids don't want to feel like a burden. They don't want to feel like a burden.
It's not fair to our kids.
It's not fair. And it's not fair to use them as a tool or a pawn in the brainwashing. So what happens in the brain is like we have thoughts and we want to prove them on the outside. Ness and Paz, they are still in that liminal space. They are so close to the source. They don't want to be used as a pawn or an excuse for my smallness.
No.
That's not fair to anyone involved. So here I come, Costa Rica.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you so much. Awesome. And as you know, Dan has also really evolved in this time. Really beautifully.
Oh, I'm so glad. That makes me so happy to hear.
Yeah.
I started working with, I've been working with women for 10 years, and so many women were getting divorced. And I was like, oh geez, okay, we need to do something. We got to do something different. And so that's when Jonathan and I started teaching modern marriage, and men get to grow too.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned earlier on, it's like when you're doing your work and you're holding boundaries and you're changing as women must, I do think it causes friction. I do. Yeah. And that's normal. And we need the tools to navigate that, because often we come together having trauma bonds, and we're young, or we're both brainwashed, or whatever it is. We're coming together and we're this way. And it is the natural course of things for certainly women to evolve and change. And that's got to impact the container. Yeah. The guy.
It really does.
Yeah. And I'm talking specifically with a heterosexual relationship only because that's my experience, but I just have a hunch. This applies elsewhere as well.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So we're wrapping up. I could talk to you forever, but I'll just sign up for one of your retreats and we can hang out in person, and Jonathan and I can have a good second generation Holocaust survivor hug. We made it, babe. We made it.
He would really love that.
Yeah. We're miracles. All of us. Miracles. Where can I find you on the interwebs, and where can our audience find you? Maybe even really at your next in-person retreat. So give us
that'd be great. Yeah. So the best place to just feel like you're hanging out with me is on Instagram, which is I'm at Sarah Jenks. And you can also go to sarahjenks.com. It's Sarah with an H, Jenks. KS. And then my next amazing online retreat is coming out soon. I haven't even announced the name yet, but it's going to be epic. Just come on, stay tuned, and you'll see it. I tend to like put off fireworks when I do new things.
What about your? It's so fun. Yeah, you're really good at the fireworks. I'm so into it. Don't you have a membership also?
I do. I also have a membership called Holy Woman, and Holy Woman is a really great place to start. And it's also a really great thing to pair with any of the other work that I do, because it is the sustainer community. You join for a year. We have hundreds of women in it, and it's the path to going from just thinking you're a normal average human to really remembering that you're a holy woman. And so we do a lot of ritual. There's a lot of practices. We track the moon. We track the astrology. It's a place to come and really be seen and be heard and have deep, meaningful conversations. I talk about, we have this thing that's called Sacred Sunday School, which is like all of the sacred feminine, religious lore that we should have received in any religion. I have guests come on and talk about different sacred, like the lost sacred feminine stories. And so it's just a fun, deep, amazing place to be. And the women are next level, so loving, so caring, so smart. It's an amazing place.
Are your courses like Sovereign Woman also available sort of a la carte?
Yes, Sovereign, not all of them, but Sovereign Mother is available all the time. And you can get that right on my website.
Awesome. And you said in the course, I remember you said, we need the women who aren't necessarily mothers yet to know this information of sovereignty, of the importance of self and self-discovery and their own strength, because we're caring for the next generation, right? Yeah. Can you imagine how high vibe these little beings can be, and some already are?
I know. I find that like a lot of the children coming in are so high vibe, just naturally. And our job is to just like not get in the way. No, it's an amazing generation coming up.
Amen. 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 Yeah. I feel that too. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Daniella. This was so great.
I'm so glad. All right. See you on the interwebs. Maybe I'll see you. Wait, hold on. Do people sleep over in your compound?
Not yet, but next time.
I'm gunning for a slumber party is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, we're going to do it. No, next time I'm actually looking at this really cool glamping company.
Oh, great.
That's going to come and like set up tents all over the property.
Okay, so then I'll see you then. See you there.
Perfect.
And then. Okay. Bye.